Crime is the issue in the Atlanta mayor's race, and notable crime fighter Dr. Cedric Alexander may be the answer to the problem. Dr. Alexander, a national law enforcement expert and CNN analyst on policing, is also mayoral candidate Sharon Gay's public safety advisor.
I'll stop right there. Thank you.
Dr. Alexander, does this speech amount to an endorsement of Sharon Gay's campaign?
I would say that it would, and if I sound anything short of that, let me be clear. I think it's important anytime that I signed off on advising anyone around a very critical issue like this, I have to endorse that candidate. And I endorse her from a posture of this, and this alone. She is committed to this mission. I spent 40 years of my life in public safety. Even post my career, I'm still in public safety, working, reading, writing, spending time, talking to criminal justice people across this country every day.
It's time once again for another edition of Talk to Me. And now, here's Emmy himself, 8-time Emmy Award-winning journalist, Maynard Eaton.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of Talk to Me. And what we're talking about this week is something everyone in the country is talking about: public safety, crime. And we have an expert with us, Dr. Cedric Alexander. And to his right, or his left, is a young lady who's running for the mayor of Atlanta, who on June 7th, when she announced, said, we're facing a public safety emergency. Sharon Gay, as a candidate for mayor of a major city, how bad is crime, you think, in Atlanta and across the country?
Well, and good point that you mentioned that, because, and Dr. Alexander can speak more to this, but we are seeing increases in violent crime all over the country. But of course, what I'm focused on is Atlanta. And while there certainly have been times in our past when overall crime rate was much higher, what we're seeing now is a sharp increase in violent crime, particularly homicides, and in a more random, brazen, open way. And that, I think that's what has people the most fearful, because it's a lot more random. It happens in the middle of the day. There are carjackings at gas stations all over town. You've got, Range Rovers being stolen out of parking lots at gunpoint, and then just completely random shootings. Somebody's jogging on a Saturday afternoon. A little girl is shopping with her parents at Phipps Plaza, and they're shot. And so it is different from the type of crime we've seen before, and it's happened so suddenly. And because it is so random, I think that's what's caused people to be really fearful.
Dr. Alexander, you've been dealing with this across the country on national news programs, but as a former past president of Noble, the National Organization of Black legal executives, what's going on? 787 shootings this past week alone. What's going on here, sir? As a former top cop yourself, how do you see this problem?
Yeah, well, thank you very much for having me and Sharon on, Maynard. But let me start by saying this. I think it's important to note that, yes, we do have this real severe epidemic of violence that is taking place across American cities across this country, in large and moderate size and even small cities. And we're seeing it in a way certainly we have not seen it before. And there's some reasons for that, which I'll get to momentarily. But I think the important thing here is to note, if we speak specifically here to Atlanta, Atlanta is no different than any other American city. Of course, it has its own personality. But at the end of the day, we're talking about a major city with major industry, and where people come and go every day. It's vibrant, it's smart city. And people who are committed to this community each and every day that they get up and go to work. But like many American cities across this country, this uptick in violence that we're all are experiencing is a major concern, and it needs to be addressed. But let me be clear about something here, Maynard, is that we're not going to address this issue using old school tactics. We're going to have to look into the future because things are different. And even if it's notable to say, and you will hear this, that there's data that support the fact that even though crime is going up in many major cities across this country, it still does not come up to the level it was in the 1990s. And we have to be very careful with that, because what we're seeing here across the country and in Atlanta is this uptick in violent crime, this uptick in homicides and shootings, quite frankly, and other violent crimes. And even if they don't mimic the numbers of the 90s, they still are profound, severe types of injuries and deaths that are taking place. And it gives a community, it gives the world a view of this community in which it is not. So we're seeing these upticks, but what we don't want them to turn into, Maynard, is into trends that become steady and normal. We cannot normalize this. So we should not take it lightly. It's going to require a different kind of leadership. Certainly in City Hall, it's going to require forward thinking. It's going to require a great deal of talent and individuals who are capable of carrying out these various missions, which I'm quite sure Sharon Gay has in mind for her administration should she become mayor. This is a very different time we're in. And you cannot even go back and say, well, we did it 4 years ago, 5 years ago, 8 years ago, we can do it again. No, you can't, because this is a very different issue. It's driven by different variables. It's much more complicated and convoluted as if it was not before. But we got to look at this in a very, very different way here. And hopefully we'll have some time to share some of those thoughts with you.
Sharon, again, number one issue in Atlanta mayor's race, but do you think you have an edge because Dr. Alexander's on your team, is he not?
I think he certainly gives me an edge. Well, and I'll talk a little bit about how that came to be and why. Because when I first started thinking about running for mayor, we were beginning to have the concerns about racial justice and racial reckoning with regard to police-involved shootings. I mean, for us, it really started with Ahmaud Arbery back down in Brunswick, and that was, two people acting like vigilantes and shooting. He's jogging while black and is killed, and so we began to have that internal tension in Atlanta and Georgia even before the George Floyd murder. And so I really began to think about and then we started having this increase in crime. So how do we do both? What are the best practices out there? Who's got new broad thinking about how we can have a safer city, but also have good policing? Because we can't choose. We're going to have to do both. We're going to have smart, effective, modern strategies, 21st century strategies to deal with the type of situation we're facing here, both short-term and long-term. But we also have to have good policing in a way that restores the faith of our police with our community and our communities with our police. And so as I began to think about how one would do that, I sought out national expertise, and through some mutual friends was, connected with Cedric, and, knew his work, but was able to work with him personally to really develop a thoughtful, comprehensive understanding of where we are and ways you might move forward.
Dr. Alexander, again, the Department of Justice has launched a gun strike forces, as I think yesterday, if we're not mistaken. What does that mean? What is that going to do? I mean, can the Justice Department get this done where experts like you perhaps have not wrapped their head around it? What's going on from the Justice Department's point of view?
Yeah. So certainly any support that our cities across this country can receive now is going to be welcome, regardless of who they come from. And what the Justice Department is attempting to do is to send additional support through personnel, resources, whatever, into a number of major cities across this country that is seeing this consistent uptick of violence that's not occurring on a weekly basis, but on a daily basis. And in some communities on an hourly basis. That's the urgency of this. So whatever resources are received, hopefully they will be utilized in a way by leadership in those cities that will allow them to come up with a plan. But here's the thing about coming up with a plan and resources. you have to be able to understand how to utilize those resources in your respective communities, correct? So let's take Atlanta for an example. If those resources are coming into your community here in Atlanta or any other city, USA, you need to understand your community. And you have to begin to look at and understand more. What are the root causes of crime in our communities? Now, this is a little long term, but for how many cycles, mayoral cycles, have you seen candidates talk about we're going to fix the root causes, but yet you still got the same systemic issues that exist? And I think one thing that is going to be very different in Sharon Gay's administration, should she become mayor of this great city, is that you're not going to see someone who just merely talks about changing these root causes, but you have to make them come alive. We got to be able to look at unemployment, fair housing, opportunities for all. We got to be able to look at disparities in healthcare. We got to be able to look at all these social issues, Maynard, that we know that drive individuals into this space of violence, right? Because we're not born to be bad, but they're oftentimes beyond their control, may be put in situations where people are placed there. And I think we have an opportunity here to address those root issues. But what has to be addressed first and foremost is the everyday violence that is taking place in this country. And Sharon is going to talk to how we address those issues because we got a hemorrhaging that's going on now. And we need to be able to apply some immediate support should she become mayor.
Sharon, that sounds like every other politician. You're not a politician yet. Well, political promises are easy to make, hard to prove, hard to do.
Right. And, we're trying not to make promises. We're trying to provide solutions and provide strategies and not just have sound bites and not just claim 400 of this and 200 of that and all be better.
That's right.
The short-term issue about crime and the longer-term issue about our city are really all related. And that really is too many years of lack of investment in some of our neighborhoods. And that has to be a bottom-up strategy. That has a place-based strategy. And so the things that Cedric is talking about need to be done within our neighborhoods, and not all the needs are going to be the same. And so we really need to build our civic partnership, work with the community leaders who are already there, help foster new leadership, work with the faith community, and look at it on a neighborhood by neighborhood basis and address the chronic problems in those neighborhoods that are causing children to have a lesser chance of success in life. We've spent too much time asking the schools to fix the neighborhoods. Instead, we need to lift up the neighborhoods, and that will lift up the schools, lift up the families, and make all of that work better, which then reduces the likelihood that a young person will be drawn to crime.
Dr. Alexander, for the life of me, I don't get it. Where are these guns coming from? 787 shootings this week alone. Where are these kids buying these guns? They can't walk into a gun shop and buy a gun.
Let's acknowledge, Maynard, that in this country, we have more guns than we have American citizens that are already out in the environment across this country. And there are a lot of legal gun owners and responsible gun owners across this country. Let me acknowledge that. But what we also have is an overabundance of those who find themselves involved in criminal activity, who have the ability, right, to be able to acquire those very dangerous weapons. Because we're not talking about the old 38 special Saturday night special from our generation, right? We're talking about automatic weapons. We're talking about long rifles. We're talking about weapons that certainly do and have and currently create a lot of death and mayhem. So they're coming from a variety of different places. The accessibility, many guns are being stolen from vehicles that are unsecure, from homes, out of residences. They find them way back to the street. You have straw purchases of guns that take place where you have an individual like myself. I could be legally go in and buy a gun, but once I do, I sell it to you, right? It goes to someone else illegally, and the purchase was not made legally and properly based on ATF's recommendations in terms of how they see and manage those weapons in the work that they do. So it's just coming from a variety of places. And we also have to remember, you live in the state, and there are many other states across this country that allow people to carry weapons.
Yes.
And the accessibility there. And here again, the greatest majority of people that carry weapons are good citizens. The problem becomes is that we have to accept the fact we have those that get a hold of these weapons either through straw purchase, either through stealing those weapons, and those who may go buy weapons via the black market, come back, sell them out the trunk of their car, whatever the case may have to be. But part of this operation that you talked about at the top of this, Maynard, where the Justice Department is coming in, that's their role, is to try to get in front of some of these gun sales and illegal purchases, if you will, across this country where they're being sold illegally or they're being sold out of the back door through a straw purchase, etc. But at the end of the day, even with all the federal and state support you may receive, what you got to have at a local level, because all these issues are local, is that you have to have a leadership in government that understands this from a lot of different perspectives, because that individual, that city leader, that elected official will be able to conceptualize these issues, surround themselves with people who have the expertise to address a variety of different these social issues there, Maynard. But in addition to that, you got to also be able to bring in the community to be part of that public safety process, and not just doing it because it sounds good, but actually having a real plan, a real way of carrying out this mission. Because for too long, in many cities across this country, there's always this rhetoric from elected officials about what they're going to do. Here is the difference between Sharon Gay and elected officials. She is not a politician, right? So what she brings with her is a great deal of experience around her current profession in the legal field and the work that she has done in order to move this city forward, right? So there's a lot of strength in her resume. It's a lot of strength in her years of experience in government. But in addition to that, people will say, well, you don't have the elected official experience. And here's what I will always say. You've got elected officials in this community and communities across this country. And the question I will ask, what is it that you really have? What's really different, right? You've been elected. So what's different? Because we got to go back and we got to really look at it. And Sharon Gay would need to be judged on this if she becomes mayor tomorrow. We got to look at what leaders have really done to affect change. And I'm not just talking about putting up brick and mortar buildings. I'm talking about the sustainable type of things, particularly around public safety. Is that going to be created today will carry on for generations. So when I hear an elected official anywhere say, well, I've done it once, I can do it again. The reality of it is we're in a very, very different place now than what we've ever been in the history of this country that's got us to this place of violent crime. So we got to be able to address it better. We got to be able to diagnose it, treat it, and approach it in a far different way. When I served on the 21st Century Task Force with President Obama, on March 2nd, 2015, myself and 10 other people wrote a document that's known in the 21st Century Task Force report that was utilized across this entire country, Maynard, to help bridge the gap between police and community. Out of that came terminologies that we all have grown very accustomed to, such as transparency, procedural justice, etc. Body cameras that you see worn on police officers across this country came out as a result of that document. Developing and enhancing and improving relationships with policing and communities came out of that document. And then during that administration, and after spending 2 hours there with former President Obama telling us very clearly, no parts of our community is safe until everyone feels safe. And we understood it then. Sharon gets it and understands it. And she understands it to a point that she knows how to employ, right? Not just the words, but the actions that's going to move Atlanta to the forefront. Because I'm going to say this and I'm going to stop here, Maynard, is that Atlanta has the opportunity. And we're not talking about past. We're talking about present. We're talking about future. This city, this community has the ability to be the leaders around any and everything. We know we got good medicine. We got good technology. We got some of the best schools in the country. HBCUs, you name it, state schools, private schools, we got it all. But our public safety component, our leadership at a city level going forward has to be just as dynamic and forward thinking. And the only way you get there is that you have to be willing, right, to be able to see things differently. Because if we go back and we use the same old, well, you didn't grow up here, well, you're not an elected official, well, you didn't come from the inside, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. How has that moved your head any? And there's nothing to show you that. But when I hear and I talk to a lot of chiefs and a lot of mayors across this country, and one thing many of them get, the ones who are forward thinking, forward moving, and not just sharing rhetoric, but moving out of the way for different ideas and thoughts in people like Sharon Gay. Those are the cities that are marching forward, not based on an old drum beat, but based on a new drum beat, right? Because what is happening in our environment is so different. We've seen an insurrection. We've seen a pandemic that none of us have ever seen in our lifetime. We've seen kids out of school, people unemployed, and we're still recovering, and we're seeing a resurgence of this pandemic. That's going to have a very huge impact on public safety, not just in policing, but in fire, in our 911 system, emergency management, you name it. So this is a very different time for a new type of leadership, right? Because we're moving in this country in a very different space. And you got to have the ability to forecast and to see out in front of you and not just talk that same old rhetoric about what you're going to do, but couple that with actually doing it and have a way in order to do it. And that's what Sharon Gay, I truly believe in my heart of hearts, because trust me, if I didn't believe in her, I'll be on a beach in Pensacola right now, right? And I believe she had a capacity to do it. We all love Atlanta, whether we grew up here or we lived here, we passed through here. Everybody in America loves this great city, right? And we all want to see the very best for it.
Sharon, I got to tell you, you may not be political. Well, Dr. Alexander sure is. Those subtle shots at former Mayor Kasim Reed, who wants the job again, are well taken, that's for sure. Well, let me ask you guys, both of you, to answer this question. The Attorney General says, we're in a battle for the heart and soul of America. Is that really where we are today? Is that crucial? The heart and soul of America? Sharon, you lead off first, please.
Well, when you think back to January 6th, as Cedric said, and think back to some of the rhetoric of the last 4 years and just extraordinary pitting Americans against Americans and pitting Americans against America and the democracy and the systems that we have in place. We survived, but we still are at a stress and tension point, I think. And that gets played out locally. A lot of it seems like all politics has been nationalized, and I'm trying to stay very local, but I see those tensions played out at the local level. And it affects the way we think about one another, the way we think about our successes, the way we think about how we move forward. And so I like what the president's doing is to lean in. The solution is not to run away or go hide under our beds. The solution is to do what we've always done in Atlanta, which is pull ourselves together, build a unified coalition, bring all the talent that we have in our city to bear, because we have extraordinary talent in the city. And we have a unique way of doing things that has served us well for a long time. But we're called upon to use that method, that talent, in a much more robust, intense way, so that we find our way out of the pandemic and out of this current crisis healthier, stronger, more united.
Dr. Alexander, let's end with you, please. Are we in peril? Are you concerned? I mean, you're a top cop. You talk about this every day.
Mm-hmm.
Heart and soul of America. We're at that danger point, you think?
So let me say this in regards to your last. I really appreciate your kind comments, Maynard. But what I'm saying is not directed at anyone. One thing this administration is very clear about: we stay above the fray. We're not interested in any other candidate except our candidate right here. Right?
I had to put that in there, though.
Yeah, that's fine. But I just want to be clear, because that is the level and that's the type of way intellectually we think about things. Because this is not personal. This is about the hearts of this country. This is about exactly what President Biden was speaking to, and what this country in this right now, in this very moment and space we're in, is that it wants and it needs leadership. Whether you stand on the right or the left, whether you're black or white, whatever it may happen to be, people are looking for leadership. And they're looking for leadership at a time in a crisis in America that we've never seen like before, Maynard, in my lifetime or yours or Sharon's. So we're in a different place that requires a different type of leadership, someone who is going to lead very smartly from the front, that's going to embrace an entire community to become part of this, not just in terms of verbiage, but in terms of action. Because President Biden is absolutely right in that statement. But what he's saying, and how I read that, right, as a former leader of a number of large agencies across this country, both at the local, state, and federal level, is that we need leadership. We need it yesterday in our cities across this country. And what Sharon Gay is proposing here in her campaign and in her run for mayor of this great city, is that for people to listen and to watch and to see her heart and see that this is nothing more than moving this great city forward and doing it in a way in which we in Atlanta, you in Atlanta, Atlantans who live here every day, you become the model for the rest of the nation. We don't have to follow anybody. We're going to lead, and we're going to lead our way out of this public safety issue that we're confronted with. And we're going to lead ourselves out of this economic issues that we're confronted with. And I think we have some opportunity here with the leadership of Sharon Gay and her administration to be able to do that. And that's not a political statement. That is a statement coming from the heart of an American and someone who's lived in this community, but spends all my time across this country every day, helping police departments and public safety to advance itself in a way that we know is going to be best for the country overall.
Ladies and gentlemen, you've been listening to a public safety expert, a politically savvy one at that. And of course, that's Cedric Alexander. Sharon Gay, Mayor for Atlanta, good luck. You got a good teammate here, that's for sure.
That's the way I operate.
Ladies and gentlemen, this has been Talk to Me. We'll see you next week.
Thank you, Maynard.
Thank you.